Hi, I'm Marshall Shannon with Ministry Design Training. Today is a tutorial on construction and your money. And so I've put several of the documents, support documents that I've given you with the videos. And today we're going to look at 3 different exercises to give you some more information about how to use these training documents to support your efforts to prepare. Remember, our process is broken into 5 categories: preparation and planning, design, construction, and facility management. That's a timeline that runs through one into the other for you to start when you first have the seed thought in your mind that you need to plan to build and prepare to build, all the way through taking care of it after it's built. And so today we're going to talk about money. So here is the first one for you, and that is preliminary startup questions. This document is a part of your videos, and wanted to make certain that you had some assistance with understanding what this means. Well, here is a little bit about it. The first question is, how much money can you borrow? I tell you to secure a letter of commitment from your lender to verify how much they will loan you and on what terms. The reason why I do that, a letter of commitment has been historically, as I have been taught doing this as a project consultant for 2 different national church builders, is a letter from the lender stating the terms and verifying that you have qualified and they are going to lend you money. You're trying to nail down as best as you can that you literally are going to get the money. Here's what happens in a scenario for you, and it happens over and over again, and I've heard it happen to church after church. You as a pastor, ministry leader in your ministry, leading your building project, you call up a lender, and this bank of so-and-so tells you, and you talk to a loan officer, and they say, oh, we would love to have your business. We'd love to help you with your new construction. Please come see us. And you do that, and you interpret what they are saying to you as, well, this is as good as done. The way he treated me on the phone, he said he'd love to help me. They believe they'd be able to help me, and you interpret that language as being a commitment on their part. Once you want a letter of commitment and you ask them for a letter of commitment so that you're not going and spending all this money during the preparation, planning, and design stage to find out when you're ready to start construction that you can't make this happen because they went back behind the curtain, so to speak, to their board or board of regents, whatever they're going to call it, and they decide that at that time they can't help you. It's a very precarious environment that we're in when it comes to borrowing money for anything, and in particular for church construction or renovation. So you want to try and get this duck in a row at the front end of your preparation. Do not be bashful. Go to your banker, get your finances ready. We've got webinars for you to tell you how to prepare your finance package to apply for a loan with any lender, and follow what it says. Here's a formula for it. How much money can you raise? The national averages that are talked about by the industry professionals as they try and keep track of these things, if you decide to do an in-house self-performed capital campaign to raise money for your construction project, you're going to raise as little as 60% of 1 year's annual giving and as much as 1 times your annual giving. So if your annual giving is $500,000, you're going to raise 60% of that and no more than $500,000 for your project, and then it's collected over 3 years. Now, you can do a thing called first fruits, where you have people who give their whole pledge up front. They have the disposable income and savings or liquidate some asset, and they give you their lump sum up front. And that might be 10, 20% of the total amount pledged. It differs from church to church. I don't know the national statistic there for that. But you really got to look at if you're going to do that or you're going to use an outside capital stewardship consultant, you're going to raise probably 1.5 to 2 times your annual income. And I've seen it go as high as 6 times your annual income. Matter of fact, I have a good friend who is a capital stewardship consultant, generosity coach. His first project he did in helping a church, they raised 6 times their annual income, annual budget for annual giving for the church he was helping. I've seen another one happen where it was 5 times, but the national average, we tell you, plan on 1.5 to 2. Why? You plan with the low numbers, with the conservative numbers. If you plan with the high number, you're in trouble. So let's go back to the first one here. How much money can you borrow? Right now, lenders are loaning money to banks at 2 to 2.5 times their annual giving. Fundraising, depending on whether you do it in or out, with the leadership, you've got as little as 60% up to 2 times your annual giving. How much money do you have on hand? Now, you may have cash on hand. How much of that can you use towards your building project? And how much should you spend? Just because you can afford $1 million project doesn't mean that God wants you to invest that much in your building project. You don't want to weaken the overall ministry, nor the future of your ministry, nor the day-to-day operations of your ministry by overextending yourself on building too much building, and you're wagering or rolling the dice that you're going to grow to pay for it. Guys, I pastored a church that rolled the dice and then went belly up. Actually, the church I pastored came from that church. Let me put it that way. They just thought, well, we're growing, future growth is going to pay for the building. You need to be able to pay for that building out of your current family and be conservative as you do it. Now, here's another startup question for you. Do you have a recent boundary and topographical survey? Boundary survey, the outside framework of your building showing where the borders are, the boundary lines, and then topographical shows you everything else on the inside. The elevation and decline of the property as it goes up and down, probably in 1-foot increments. I've given you a minimum topographical survey requirement sheet that talks about the minimum that a civil engineer and an architect would like to have, because they're basing their design on that surveyor's accuracy with your property. So they've got to know where the utilities are, any buildings, any underground facilities, or anything that is there that's going to affect their design. So you need to have money to get one of those. If you don't have one, they want a recent one. And I've been told no older than 6 months old. But they really want to make certain that it's been done correctly, because they're basing their whole design on that foundation. So you don't want a faulty foundation. You have to answer the question in startup, what should you build and why, to define your project. What are the limitations of your property? How many people can you park and take care of for at one time? Now, 100 cars per acre. How many acres of land do you have to commit to parking? Now, that number can go up from 100, but that's just a rule of thumb. So, how many people per car come to your services? 2 people? The national average is somewhere between 2.1 and 2.7 people per car, but you've got to know that, because you can't minister to them in your auditorium and educational facilities if you can't get them on the campus. So does that mean you're going to have to run a shuttle bus to an off-site campus, park along the street? I mean, I've worked with a church that didn't own a parking space. Everything was on the street. So Sunday morning, there were a couple of 100 cars parked all around the city, all around their church property. That's the way a downtown church usually is. Next question. Have you set a timeline to start construction? Are you in a hurry, or can you take your time? You really want to decide and answer this question at the front end so that those you interview to help you can have some idea of what you're doing. What money will you need up front? We're going to get to a more extensive document in a minute, but here's, for planning and design work, you've got industry professionals, architects and engineers, surveyors. You've got permitting with your local authorities. You've got soil tests, so you've got those engineers who are involved. But what is that going to cost? And that's a startup question. So how will you balance cost, quality, and size in your project? Because you can control two of the three. Which two will you choose to control? So you can tell the industry professionals, this is how much money we're going to spend, and this is the size building we want. Then the quality of that building will be dictated to you. Or you can pick quality and size, and the cost will be dictated to you. Or you can pick the cost and the quality, and the size will be dictated to you. But you're not going to get away with controlling all three of those. So just understand that everyone has to navigate their way through these key questions as they go. Now, let me give you a quick overview in the construction process. These are just like some mile markers on your journey towards your building. And as you go through the process of preparing to build, planning to design, designing your building, constructing your facility, and then caring for it, here are some of the steps you've got as you go through that. A quick review of the key points in the construction process. Number one, you've got to determine your affordability. So you want to consult a lender. Number two, you've got to set a budget for the project. We'll get to that in a moment. A more thorough understanding of what is included in a project budget. But you've got to set it and to identify a range in every point, in every key point, so that everyone knows up front how much money you're going to spend on the different aspects. So think of a funnel. At the top of the funnel, it's got a wider mouth. And as you funnel it down, it narrows the funnel like a cone, narrows down and makes it much more succinct as to what's coming out. With your budgeting, you start in very, very general range terms. But as you go through the process, you begin to funnel all that down to a point, to really do a laser point job of identifying the cost in every aspect of your building. So you're going to want to know what the audio is going to cost, what the video is going to cost, what the lighting is going to cost, what the acoustics is going to cost, what your furniture for the auditorium is going to cost, platform, any instruments you're using, having to purchase, your seating, your welcome center, your sound booth, all these different areas. You start breaking those down as you have subcommittees and work groups going to get the pricing and following your direction with the quality that you're looking for and what the product is supposed to do for you, to come back and be able to piece this together. You're trying to head off surprises that warp your project out of sight with money, or that make you stumble and stop and stall out. Okay, so you want to determine your affordability. You want to set a budget, a total project budget with all the components in it. You want to perform a feasibility study. What is possible? I've given you a definition of a feasibility study in one of the support docs. You want to contract for the boundary and topographical survey. Then you're going to hire industry professionals, architect, civil engineer, a builder, preferably. If you're going to use an integrated project delivery system, you're bringing all the players up front, getting their wisdom and input on the front end during design, during planning stage, and then design stage, instead of waiting to bring them in later. And you've got others that are involved, landscape architects, interior designers, audio-visual lighting, acoustical engineers. These and others have to be engaged with, and you've got to determine what delivery system you're going to use in order to carry out and deliver your building. Then you're going to approve, after you perform your master plan, you're going to approve your master plan. the conceptual design and secure an accurate cost estimate from builders, or if your architect has the newest software, the Rivet, you can use that 3D, and they can do a very close cost estimate with that. It's a newer technology, but it is being used today with success. So as you go through this, you've got to do a firm cost estimate before you move ahead. That's a mile marker. Before you go pay for construction drawings, you have to have your cost firm. You know what it's going to cost. You've gotten it from reliable sources with skin in the game. Builders who are bidding on your project, perhaps an estimator from the architect who's using 3D, and you're trying to confirm in the multitude of counselors there is safety. Then you want to secure a letter of commitment from your lender. You want to have that in hand. So you have your capital stewardship pledges, your letter of commitment, and your cost estimates before you go to the construction document development phase. And then once those are done, you approve them. You go through your cost estimate in each phase through the construction estimate. The architect may complete it in 30, 45, 50%, 65%, 70%, 85%, 100%. He's going to complete them and tell you how complete the documents are. And each time he gets to a new phase, you want your estimators looking at the plans to make certain that you're still on course to fall within your total project budget. So if you were going to spend $1 million on the structure, on the building, you got to make certain it's within that. If you were going to spend $200,000 on furniture, you got to make certain you're still within that, and on you go. So you want to obtain your building permit. Once the documents are done, estimate is correct, CDs are developed, and you're ready to get the building permit, have those plans approved, and then you're going to issue a notice to proceed with construction to your builder and architect, and you're going to engage the architect to inspect the construction as it progresses, and you're going to build your building. Those are some milestones or mile markers in the process. Now, there's plenty of stuff that is going on each side of each one of these mile markers, but that is a bird's eye view of what's happening. Now, let's go to the quick affordability tool, and I've already given you somewhat a direction of this, but I put this together for you as a support doc so that you could plug in numbers as you go. And then this quick affordability tool is going to become a very detailed line item budget where you are plugging in cost all the way through to make certain that you don't end up with what was supposed to have been $1 million project and now the budget is $1.5 million and you can't build it. It's 50% over. So as you look at this, borrowing capabilities, 2 to 2.5 times your annual giving. Fundraising capabilities, 0.6 to 2 times your annual giving. I wouldn't schedule or budget any more than 2 times, and that's normally going to be with your capital stewardship consultant who does this for a living. Your cash on hand. If you have cash, how much of it can you use? Can you liquidate anything in your possession to generate cash on hand? You get a subtotal, and then you've got to subtract any outstanding debt, because your lenders are going to look at your debt ratio and they're going to look at how much you owe, and you've got to subtract that from that subtotal to get your total affordability. Now, as you consider this, we want to talk about a quick overview of your budgeting. In your design phase, and I've broken this down into 7 phases to start with. That's the top of your funnel. Architectural drawings, engineering plans. You see all the plans there. Your site plan, MEPs, landscape design, AVL, and interior design. Depending upon the complexity of your project and who you're building your building for and so forth, you may have an interior designer. At one time, landscape was one of the 5 reasons why families walked into a church for the first time, was that landscaping what attracted them. So it is important how your facilities look and blend with your community and are well received and perceived. So you've got a plan in your budget for the design. Then there's site work. That's everything outside the actual structure of the building. Clearing and grading, retention, fencing, curbing, sidewalks, gutters, sediment control, landscaping. That's the actual work. Not to, well, it will shock you. If you're going onto property for the first time, virgin soil, trees or no trees, cow pasture or former agricultural fields, and you're going to build on that piece of ground, our experience for the cost of the site work on brand new piece of ground to put a building for the first time on it is 35 to 40% of the budget, of the total project budget, has to be allocated to site work. It's very expensive to move the earth and do the things that are on the sheet in front of you. Often churches don't really get a grasp of the site work until they're ready to start construction and get bids, and then realize, wow, it really drove the cost of it up. I'm telling you on the front end, to get a civil engineer and a site company who performs the work to work hand in hand to give you a firm budget on what it's actually going to take as you work with your architect and your civil engineer and a general contractor who actually does site work. And you begin to work with that and put together the true cost in a range of what it's going to cost you. Be wise about it. If it is kind of the mystery part of the budget, and it often rises up and bites churches because they couldn't properly estimate it. There's the structure. You should be able to estimate within a range the cost of your structure, your building. Then there's furnitures, fixtures, and equipment that you've got to look at your building. You're going to build your building and you're going to have an empty floor and empty walls. You've got to put cabinets in, storage cabinets, file cabinets, office furniture, classroom furniture, worship furniture. In your foyer, if you're going to have a third place, a welcome center, a sitting and lounge area, a gathering place in your fellowship hall, you're going to have tables and chairs, probably folding, that you're going to set people at to eat and to fellowship. You may have all the kitchen stuff if you're putting that in, warming kitchen or full commercial or something in between. You've got all these different things to deal with, and you must count the cost. So don't cheat here. Be conservative, have your committees do their homework, come back with options, sort it out, and decide which way you're going. This is not easy. Then you've got lending and pre-construction. Before you ever put a shovel in the ground, you're going to have a building permit and owner's risk, builder's risk, insurance. You may have some management fees, and you may have some interest on our origination points on lending, and any number of other things that comes in the front end before you build. We'll get to that in our next document as we go through this. But you've got to be putting right numbers into this or you're going to be in trouble. Then you've got a contingency fund. This is money that is set aside for unplanned cost increases and emergencies. These are unforeseen expenditures that every project has. Example, one of the companies I worked for, we were doing a job in the southeast, and the state fire marshal was the last one to sign off on the blueprints done by the architect. But while we were sheetrocking the auditorium for the church, their new building, the local fire marshal became very convinced. He was convicted, I guess, that they, I don't know the guy, but that they needed to sprinkle the building, put a sprinkler system in. And so he was able to convince everyone to do that. He overrode the state fire marshal who was over him, won his argument, had to stop the project, had to pull the sheetrock off, go get an engineer to design the sprinkler system, and everything that went with that, install the sprinkler system, and restart the project, restart sheetrocking the building. That was $80,000, and 3 months later, that was covered by the contingency funds. Should be 3 to 5% at the minimum for new construction. and 10 to 15% for renovation projects. Now those are just roundhouse numbers. It has to be applied contextually to your complexity of your situation and your industry professionals, your builder and architect, but they should help you put aside that. Because if you have a hiccup, a bump in the road as you go, and you're not prepared with funds to cover it, what are you going to do? Go try and borrow more money? All these items may vary as you look at them and how I put them together, because different guys put them in different categories and state it differently. Some start much more complex. This is a very easy to see one sheet budget, total project budget worksheet. And that's what it was intended to be, just very easy for you. Now, the last one that I'm going to show you are the startup cost. You're going to need money in hand. So you've got some potential startup cost, that how you're going to use your money. You've got to have cash in hand. Now, there are several ways to do this. You can do a building program in-house or out of house and do it that way. But I would encourage you, as you do your long-range planning for your ministry in preparing for God's blessing you with a harvest of souls. So you have new people, new families coming in, and new people to care for, and you're leading people to Christ, and your church is growing, and you're looking at your facilities and trying to project out with your consistent growth rate. At what point are you going to have to move from maybe having multiple services Sunday morning in your facility to have to build or relocate or renovate and build? Then I would encourage you, if you're 5 years out in your projections from building, I would encourage you to do what one friend of mine did some years ago. He took 5 years. He broke his estimated building payment into fifths, and each year he raised his general budget by 1/5 of that total projected building payment, mortgage payment. So if it was $10,000, he increased his general budget $2,000 a month for the first year, and then he did it again, added another $2,000 for the second year, and the third year another $2,000. He kept challenging his church, but as his church grew in a pattern, they were able to handle it. And when it came time for his building to get in his new building, guess what? Two things had happened. Number one, the congregation was accustomed to carrying that potential debt burden by servicing the mortgage for the new building, a monthly payment. And number two, all the money that they were putting into that building fund, as though they did have a mortgage payment, was savings to help them with their startup cost. And so here are some of the things that you're going to have as you go through this. Hang on to your hat here and scribble down some notes as I go through it, because I'm going to give you some ballpark numbers here as we go through it. In design cost, you have architectural fees. Master planning before each set of blueprints that are done, before you start into full construction drawings. It's going to cost you, I've never seen it done less than $3,000, and then it goes up to $25,000, $45,000 to do a master plan. So that money, you need to be able to pay your architect as he's doing a master plan every time you go to build, even renovate. You need to revisit your master plan to make certain that you're still on course, on track, and going in the same direction as you were the last time you built, because things change. So if you're going to spend, let's say, $10,000 to $12,000 for a master plan, and it's so widely varies for this, depending on the size of the project, I really can't give you too much of a range there. But you're going to end up with presentation options of a floor plan, elevation, site plan, artist rendering, or a computerized 3D with narration, which should cost you extra money. When it first started out, it was really pricey, and it's more affordable today to get a computerized 3D with narration. You've got music and a voice, and you're talking to the people as they're looking at it on your PowerPoint screen, your projector screen, or on their computer at their laptop on your website, and you're walking them through all the way around the outside and flying them through your building, and you're talking about everything that is there. That's going to cost more money. So you need to begin talking to architects and investigating what's available in your area. You used to have reproduction cost, and that was you were going to have to make copies of the blueprints of the construction drawings for bidding purposes. But with electronic copies today, but you're still going to have some subcontractors and even general contractors who are, for one reason or another, don't have that. They just want to feel the paper in their hand. So you may have some cost there, and you can pass that cost along to them. But nonetheless, it is something that you need to be investigating to see if you're going to need it. There are administration fees during construction, and you need to have that money in hand. And then there's as-built plans, corrected plans after construction was complete for your last project, and you may want to pay a little extra to the architect to develop that for this project. But you're going to have some architectural fees, and they're going to range. The architect, his fees are going to range between 6 and 8% of the construction cost and the site work cost. Now, having said that, I've got an architect friend who designs for his architectural and engineering 2.5% of the project. I have another friend who has off-the-shelf plans, and theirs was like 3 to 4%. Then I have architect friends who do the design for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9%. It really depends on where you are, who you're using, what services they're rendering, and what the economy is like as to how much work they have. Then you've got engineering, where your structural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineering falls inside of your architectural fees because he is overseeing and guiding the whole design. So he has working with him and for him, either in-house or as subcontracted, the MEP and structural engineers. And then the civil engineer may or may not work for the architectural firm, but that is all coordinated and orchestrated together. But if you were to buy them outright, your engineering fees for the structural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and engineering may be 1.5 to 2%. Now, I hope I haven't spoken out of school there, but that's what I've seen. Civil engineering is going to be 1 to 1.5% of the project. And again, you have to go nail this down for your area because it can be completely different. I was in an area in the Midwest meeting with the church who got their buildings built with almost no field conditions, general conditions by the builder. And so where the average builder with his general conditions and his markup is making 22 to 25% of the total project, the cost of the building and the site work, these guys were doing it for 10 and 12%. And the area and location and everything, I mean, it was just walking into the twilight zone. So, that kind of thing can happen. And, we got 50 states to build in, and all the counties and cities and towns within it, people can do what they want and what the economy will bear. So understand in talking about this that that's a general range. Well, to get that civil engineering done, you got to have cash in hand. So $1 million project, 6 to 8% for the architect, and the MEPs and structural is $60,000 to $80,000. Engineering at 1 to 1.5% is $10,000 to $15,000 for the engineering, but the guy could charge you 3%. Interior design might charge you 0.5%. Landscape architect might charge you 0.5% to 1.5%. I really don't have hard numbers for that. You've got to investigate it for your area, because I'm recording this today, but when you're watching this 6 months to a year to 18 months from now, the whole context might have changed in the environment with it as far as paying them. Audiovisual lighting design and engineering, you have designers, fabricators, and installers. And so as you go through this, you've got to sort through that. But with your design, these are costs that you're going to need to have this money up front, particularly if you're going to do integrated project delivery system, where you're bringing the team members together, contracting with them separately, and orchestrating their working together so that everybody has input. Down the street from my home is the BMW plant here in Greer, South Carolina. Well, when you look at their designers for their company in Germany, and some here in the States, I would guess, and then you've got the assembly line, but you've also got suppliers, and then you've got fabricators, manufacturers who are producing the parts that are being assembled on the assembly line in the plant just down the road. All of those people are brought in the front end of their design so that you're counting the cost, looking at all the design, working out kinks in the product, and you want to put together a car that runs well and lasts a long time and that services the customer well so that you can create your brand and sell more cars. Well, when you're looking at this, put together your team of your designers and suppliers and contractors and fabricators and all these different people, so that, and you've got to have money to do that on the front end. So on $1 million project, we're looking at you're needing $100,000 to begin covering what we're talking about here. What if you have to bring the utilities to your property? What if before they'll give you a building permit, you have to have that done? And so you've got sewer options. You've got the sewer lines or a septic tank. You've got water options. Either the water lines brought into your property by your local authorities, or you can use a well if they'll let you. Fire protection. You're going to need a 6-inch line to come in that's dedicated to your fire protection. You know, your sprinkler system to put the fire out if you get a fire in there. Information technology. Your telephone. Your electrical costs, your utilities, natural gas, impact fees. All of this is going on, and you have to consider this with your impact fees. The local authorities may charge you a fee to deal with the sewer, water, and building permits and fire protection and any number of other things, and you need to have money in hand. Don't get caught flat-footed. Go do your research to determine what front-end money you're going to need and start planning how you're going to raise it. You've got surveys. You say, oh my. Yes. Topographical and boundary survey. You've got soil tests to do. Fire hydrants. They may require you to put in a fire hydrant. Wetlands. What if you have to muck it? One church that I was a project consultant on, the church was able to get redesignated the wetlands on their property, which they had to do. It was in the middle of the ground, middle of their acreage. And they went through the government, had the help of a civil engineer who helped them through it, and they got their land undesignated as wetlands, but we had to muck it. It means we had to go down 3 to 4 feet, pull all the muck up, and take it over to where the detention pond was going to be, take the good earth from the detention pond area, and put it into the mucked area, compact it, test it, and built the building and paved, parked over it. But all that was cost of construction. Well, there was front-end cost to that you had to have the money to make all that happen. Now, floodplains, zoning classification. What if every time in your area you have to go before the Board of Zoning Appeals and get permission to build your building because a church ends up in some areas not being any one particular zone. They're not commercial and they're not residential. But while it allows you in many places to build in either zoning, you still have to get a variance, and that may cost some money. Your setbacks, and you've got to deal with that. So your surveys, you've got to know things like your parking ratio, your impervious coverage. Your zoning will have in it how much of your green space can you cover up with hard surfaces, meaning concrete, asphalt, and shingle, your roof line. Well, you've got to leave so much green space, and it should have an impervious coverage ratio. You may have a tree and green space ratio, as to what it's going to cost you to meet those. Landscape ordinances, property deed restrictions. You may need to look hard at the property you bought and make certain that you can do what you want to do on the property. Cross easements of sewer and power lines. What if you had to move the sewer line that had an easement across your property? Road right-of-ways. I mean, all these different things can happen to you. Now, here are some other startup costs for you to consider. What about paying off your land? Now, I built, as a senior pastor, on land that wasn't paid for. We rolled it over into the mortgage loan, and the bank let us do it. But others will make you pay it off before they'll loan you the money to build your building. Loan fees, origination fees, paying points, bond fees if you went with bonding, on and on and on. You've got these different things. Construction note. You usually pay interest only during construction, but the bank's going to want you to have that money in hand. Now on $1 million project, we're up over $100,000 potentially of startup costs that we've got to have in hand to move ahead. See, cash on hand to pay the construction interest before start of work. So before you can put a shovel in the ground and you're going to get that mortgage, and they're going to turn it into a mortgage when you finish the project, you've got a construction note. Your insurance on your builder's risk, so that you're going to have a fee there to buy that. So as you begin to count the cost and look at each one of these, have you created a strategic plan for preparing for a building program that will come your way as your church continues to grow and develop and you have need of more ministry space? Don't get caught flat-footed. Don't get caught unprepared. Prepare and have a contingency plan and start counting the cost as you look at these sheets, and so that you can prepare to have on hand the money you need to move forward. It will be a part of convincing those that need to be convinced, your congregation, your lenders, industry professionals, your local authorities, that you're ready to build. Well, I'm Marshall Shannon with Ministry Design Concepts and Ministry Design Training. I trust the Lord bless you as you look at the needs that are here, that God will enable you to move ahead with your project because you have prepared well and planned well so that you're ready to spend your money well.